Hi friends! So I'm currently back in Munich in my hometown and I'm gonna stay here for about a month before I continue traveling. I'm gonna update you about my next destinations very soon. As you maybe seen in my last videos, I lived in Bali and in SIARGAO in the last couple of months as a digital nomad, and I got a lot of questions about which travel destination is better for digital nomads. So in this video I want to give you a very necessary comparison update, and I'm gonna share my opinions, and I try to make it as quick and as straightforward as possible. In this comparison I'm gonna cover what I think are the 8 most relevant topics, which is cost of living and accommodation in general, internet, transportation, climate, social community, visa, healthcare, and safety. Okay, first of all, accommodation and cost of living. In general, I would say Bali is a bit cheaper than the Philippines, and I think the reason behind that is that the Philippine pesos is a bit stronger currency than the Balinese currency. For me, that personally meant, for example, for my accommodation in the Philippines, which was a room in like a guest house, it was very nice, very big, and very personalized in some sense, but it still costed like 800 euro per month, which is comparably kind of expensive. Whereas in Bali, I had a room which I personally didn't like as much, but it was still nice. I had a shared kitchen and stuff like that as well, and it only costed around 500 or 450 euros. In general, I would say in Bali, you should calculate, if you just have like a room in a guest house, around like 500 to 700 euros per month, and in SIARGAO it can be like 600 maybe if you're lucky, up to like over 1,000 per month. So it is more expensive definitely for accommodation. The second most asked question was like internet and reliability, speed of internet, and I have to say it obviously depends where you are staying at. For example, in Bali, my first guest house had like kind of unreliable internet, but in general, I would say Bali has quite a reliable internet. That's why it is one of the digital nomad hotspots. There are a lot of cafes that can provide really stable internet, even if your accommodation maybe doesn't have it. And I would say it's like in average normal, like in Europe as well. Like it's sometimes a bit slower, but in general, they have quite a reliable and good internet. Whereas in SIARGAO, I would say it is like either very bad or very, very good, because a lot of restaurants and accommodations already afforded Starlink, which is a satellite internet, and if you have it, it's like the most brilliant internet I ever had in my life. It's very freaking fast and very reliable, but if you don't have it in your accommodation or in wherever you go for working, the internet is quite slow and unreliable. But in general, there's even a list of a lot of restaurants and cafes who provide Starlink internet, so even if you have an accommodation that is not really providing the best internet, you can go to some of the cafes and just work from there. Or if you're a person who wants to work from a co-working space, there is a co-working space in SIARGAO as well that provides Starlink internet, so it's very stable there. Regarding mobile data and the coverage of the mobile network, I would say it's pretty similar at both islands. Like there are areas that are covered less well and better, especially of course like the touristy and very crowded areas are working very well for mobile data. Despite of the beaches at Bali, they are very bad. Like you sometimes don't have any reception at the beaches. Whereas in SIARGAO, I would say you have like mobile data almost like everywhere in the south, but if you go like further to the north, you have to be careful to download like Google Maps or wherever you want to go, because there's a very bad coverage of reception there. Climate and environment. Well, I would say climate is probably similarish. It is very hot in the dry seasons, and mostly it's not raining at that time. So for example, I stayed in Bali from mid of July until the end of October, and I can't really remember that I really had like a very bad rainy day, honestly. Like it rained maybe for an hour max and very, very little, and then it was like sunshine again. So I think I was also a bit lucky, because the rainy season starts, I think, in the beginning or middle of October, but I didn't have any rain during that time. Whereas in SIARGAO, I stayed more already in the beginning of the rainy season, and I think it was similar as if I would have stayed in Bali, but it was starting to rain here and there. There were like several times of the day where it was raining, and then the sun was out again. So I would say the climate is not necessarily very different in these two places, but what I would definitely maybe consider is that Bali is in general more sheltered regarding typhoons or any like heavy tropical storms, whereas Siargao is like more on like the receiving end of that. So they had a very big typhoon in 2 years ago, I think, and there was like a typhoon warning when I was staying there as well. So it can happen more likely there, and if it happens, it could also occur that it's more strong and actually destroys like your accommodation or something around that. But that's just something you should really look into, especially if you want to travel there during the rainy season. Regarding environment, I would say both of them have so much cool stuff, outside activities that you can do. Obviously, Bali is a bigger island and there are like different spots where you can go to, more waterfalls, more mountains where you can also climb, and a lot more like different spots, whereas Siargao is like a little island and you can go from A to B very quickly. There's a lot to do there as well, but there are definitely no mountains to climb at. And I think most activities in Siargao surround like water, like surfing, diving, free diving. Also, like I think rafting was one of the things you can also do, which I didn't do. So this is like more water activity based. Whereas in Bali, it is a bit more difficult to combine all of the activities. Like if you're staying, for example, in Canggu, you're not really able to dive there. You have to go to the other side of the island, which is like 4 hours away, and dive there. So it is not as easy to switch with all of the activities if you're interested in multiple activities such as me. Visa and duration of stay. So basically, I can only talk for myself. I have a German passport, so I can only talk from this point of view, as I don't know how it is for any other nationalities. But for the whole European passport holders, it's pretty much the same. Basically, for both countries, you don't have to apply for any visa beforehand. You can just travel there. You get a visa on arrival, which is a visa for 1 month, 30 days. And if you want to stay longer, you can extend your visa. The difference is between like how to extend your visa. Basically, in the Philippines, it was very easy. It was a page and you can just extend it via visa waiver program. And it was basically very simple, a thing of 5 minutes. Whereas in Bali, there are two different ways of how you can extend your visa. You can do it online, but you can only extend your visa online if you already applied online for the first visa. So if you already know before you travel to Bali that you're going to stay longer than a month, I would very highly recommend to apply for the visa online beforehand, because then you can extend it online, and that's also very, very easy. But if you do it like I did at the first time, which is basically just travel there and get a visa at the airport on arrival, then you can only extend it at the immigration office in Denpasar. And that is honestly kind of a hassle. I did it the 2 times I had to do it over an agency, a visa agency, because else you have to go back and forth to the immigration office like 3 times in total for one visa extension. And it's quite a far distance and it's just like not worth the time and the effort. So basically I only had to go there in person once to give them like a photo and like my fingerprints and stuff like that. So basically that's how you can do it. If you want to stay longer after the 2 months in Bali, I just traveled for a couple of days to Singapore, came back and got a new visa. In Bali, there is another option where you can apply for a longer visa for 3 months. It is much more expensive, but there's definitely like the possibility to get like a visa for 3 months and then you can extend it for another 3 months. So you can definitely stay there for a longer amount of time. Regarding the cost of the visa on arrival in the Philippines was for free and the extension costs around 50 euros. In Bali, on the other hand, the first visa costs around 30 euros or 35 euros regarding on like the fluctuation of the currency at the moment. And the extension is the same price. But if you want to do it over an agency, as I did, to make it easier for you, it costs obviously a bit more. So it was around 50 euros. Regarding transportation, I would say in both destinations, it is like very much handy if you drive a scooter, especially in Siargao. It is, I would say, even necessary. In Bali, you have still Grab and Gojek, which is like the scooter drivers that can drive you somewhere. But in general, I would say scooters are much more cheap in Bali than they are in the Philippines. In Bali, I paid around 80 euros for renting my scooter for a month, or it was like 79 or 75, something around that. Whereas in the Philippines, I paid around 150 euros per month for renting a scooter. So pretty much the double price. And the scooter in Bali was much better than the scooter I had in the Philippines. So I also got like one of the cheapest possible scooters in the Philippines, and it was like still very expensive in my opinion. Regarding getting like cabs and taxis and stuff like that, in the Philippines and SIARGAO there are a lot of tuk-tuks which drive around, which can also help you to transport like suitcases and stuff like that. But I haven't really figured out how to get them. Like basically each time I just wanted them, I just stood at the street and just waved. Maybe I just haven't figured it out yet. If you have been in SIARGAO and figured out a better way to call a tuk-tuk, you can just write it in the captions down below. But basically, I think it was more of a like see and wave kind of system, whereas in Bali it was much more handy because you can order a Grab or a Gojek, which are like the scooter drivers or also taxi drivers, and you can order them for a specific time or just like right at the moment, and then they would come and pick you up. So that was like much more handy, to be very honest. Regarding safety, I would say like generally in most parts of Asia I feel very, very safe, even safer than in Europe. So I didn't have like major issues in either of them. I felt very safe also as a woman walking around at night, just going to bars and clubs, like, and hardly ever had any issue. The only thing that happened in SIARGAO, which never really happened in Bali, was that I, for example, left my helmet out at my scooter and my helmet was stolen. And I did it quite regularly in Bali as well, and I've been in Bali much longer amount of time than I was in SIARGAO, and it never happened. Also, a friend of mine left like his very cheap sunglasses like in the side of the scooter, and they were also gone. So I think stealing is maybe a bigger issue like in SIARGAO, but in general I felt very, very safe as a woman out and about and just in general. Regarding healthcare, I would say it's very similar as well. There are like little medical centers where you can go to if you have issues. So for example, in Bali, I had a lot of infected wounds and stuff like that. And I also had like one fire coral wound in SIARGAO, which was very heavy. And you maybe seen it like in some of my videos where I had like a patch on the side. So I had to go to a medical center in SIARGAO as well. At both medical centers in Bali and in SIARGAO, I felt quite well. I felt like the staff was well prepared for like my issues, and they helped me very good. In general, it's like a different medical healthcare system than in Europe, obviously. So they would, for example, use much more antibiotica than I would like to take, because like it's like a different way of how to treat stuff. But all in all, it was a very good experience. And the last point is social communities, and I would say in both destinations you have quite big social communities where you can join very easily and find like-minded people. But in my opinion, like the social or like the whole community in SIARGAO differs quite a bit from like the Canggu Bali kind of community. It obviously depends where you're staying in Bali, but I'm talking more about like the Canggu area. So basically, I personally preferred the whole SIARGAO community. It was very like personal. It was very authentic. There were a lot of people who were like very down to earth. Also like to do outdoorsy stuff or like surf, diving. Very like kind, open, and just genuinely interested in meeting you. Whereas in Bali, I had the feeling it was more like business concentrated, so a lot of people would like to like find somebody to collaborate with or for the next business opportunity. A lot of people have startups there or try to get some momentum like in social media, for example. So it is quite a bit of a influencer style of people in Bali, whereas in SIARGAO it's more like the down-to-earth, authentic kind of people, and just a very like nice community, like everybody knows everybody and everybody is welcome kind of style. So that was my experience. In both places, there are digital nomad meetups, there are several events, there are sport stuff which you can join. In SIARGAO, it's obviously much smaller. So there's, for example, a digital nomad dinner or lunch each Thursday, and it's really cool. We always were a group of like 15 to 20 people max, whereas in Bali there are multiple different like events, meetups and stuff like that. So it is not only one, but you can choose from a lot of them, and sometimes there are a lot of people joining and sometimes there are just a few. So it really depends on how well the event is received. So yeah, that's it. That's my comparison between SIARGAO and Bali. I hope it helped you. If you have any questions about any other topic you would like to know about, just ask me a question. I try to answer them as good as possible. And if I had to choose between SIARGAO and Bali, I would probably choose SIARGAO. I liked it quite a bit better, to be honest, because it was still much smaller, much more authentic, like nicer community in my opinion, and you can do different activities but still live at the same spot, so you don't have to travel across the whole island. And I also like the nature a bit better. It is pretty much the same nature, but it's still much more like natural and rural in SIARGAO. So I hope it helped you, and I'll see you in my next video next week. Bye!